Hello, welcome back to another pen talk. Thanks for tuning in. Those of you that watch my channel know that I have declared this the year of the nib, mostly in trying to encourage some of the Chinese pen manufacturers to expand the type of nibs that they offer with their pens, and I think there's been very good expansion of nib selection that has become available, and a lot of replacement nibs that are also available at a very reasonable price. So in perusing my emails, I get emails from the various pen suppliers, and I got an email from Fountain Pen Revolution, and it just encouraged me to visit their website. And I focused on this brown Ebonite Himalaya. I had a blue one that Kevin had sent me for a review, and that has found a new home. So I just figured I would try an Ebonite one, so that's how that came about. And in looking at the nibs, you know, the Pen BBSs take a number 6 nib, and I've experimented with Knox's and other types of nibs in there, but Kevin had a bunch of number 6 nibs, which intrigued me. Here's a 1.0, here's a broad, and here's a flex version. Here's what they look like on the website. So I ordered some of those, and we're going to put them in some of the Pen BBS pens and see how well they work. Kevin's really extremely focused on customer satisfaction. He's, you know, just a great contributor to us in the pen community. You know, he's usually always provides a little gift in with his order, and that's this eyedropper pen here. So we'll take a look at that and see if it's worth a further review. But the pen that he included, which I didn't expect and didn't know anything about, didn't notice it when I was on his website, was this pen. Yeah, it looks like a classic, you know, piston fill pen. You know, just a clean design, nice clip, you know, nice band at the bottom of the cap. But when I took the cap off, I was quite surprised by this nib. That's an impressive design. So this looks similar to the design of the flex nib with that long slit, no breather hole. But then there's these cutouts. And here's how Kevin described it on his website. The first thing that I do is I do my little Flexi Test, and I do this, and I go, wow. So it requires, in that little test, less pressure than most of the steel flex nibs do. Those familiar with Noodlers, which are also sourced in India, know about that. I mean, yes, you can flex them, but it requires an effort. So I wanted to show this, the pen as received. You know, we're going to flush it. We're going to do my usual thing and then figure out what ink I'm going to put in here, ink it up, and see how this nib performs. So I've gotten a flex nib from China, which is a similar type of design, and I haven't really found a feed that will support it properly. So I have some great hopes because, you know, flex nibs have been something that's been around for a while. It's a plastic feed, not an Ebonite feed. So that, we'll see how that works. It's like a number 5 and not a number 6. So I'm very happy to have received that, and we'll take a look at how it writes. So one of the things that's always amazed me about the pen community is how sometimes it is extremely small. So a couple weeks ago at a local pen meetup, one of the people at the meetup were getting rid of some pens that they no longer wanted. So this one struck my fancy sitting on the table, and as I looked around there, it says it's a Click. It's a piston fill pen. Looks interesting. What I found amazing when I got this pen from FPR is it pretty much is a clip. You know, it's too similar to be not, and Click is a very well-known Indian pen manufacturer, one that I'm not familiar with, but obviously now I have two examples, and there are a number of Click pens that are sold on the FPR site, so, but none of them actually look like this pen, and I like the whole transparency piece of the piston. You know, very few pens have a completely transparent mechanism here, and it certainly, with a demonstrator pen like this, sets it off and makes it look nice. Here we have the Ebonite Himalaya in pieces. You know, this is similar to the push-pull converter that is on some Noodler's pens, except that one has a feeder tube and it's bigger. This one is on the small side, but holds a decent amount of ink, and when you take off this little cap, then you can push it through, clean it out well, lubricate it. It's threaded at the end, which is very nice. They've put a black O-ring at the bottom there. So I'm going to put some silicone grease when I thread this back on, but that's very, very secure, so this thing should be easy to fill. When I used my syringe to flush out the nib and feed, I tried to pull this out. It didn't come out easy, so I'm not going to worry about pushing it out. The flow was phenomenal, so I expect this to be a very, very wet writer. Pen is very well made. It feels good. Oh, the Ebonite doesn't feel quite as good as it did in the Noodler's safety pen, but it is nice to the hand. There's nice machining inside the cap that you got a nice little seal that's machined in there. I'm assuming this finial unscrews to take the clip off or fix it. The only labeling on it is this FPR, which is stamped into this cap band, and it's kind of crude stamping, but you know, it's not a super expensive pen, and mainly interested in the writing, and this could easily become an eyedropper pen. I've read different things, well, about eyedroppering Ebonite, but you know, not something I'm going to do. I'm going to use the converter. It's very easy to get a pretty full fill. You know, I did this twice because I always like to flush everything. And I haven't used this ink for a very long time. It's in the brown family. So we'll see how it works in the pen. So here's the free pen, eyedropper only, which I've disassembled. So one of the things that really struck me is this is a nicely carved Ebonite feed here. Well done. I like that fairly substantial channel there. Just a classic, looks like number 5 nib in extra fine. The pen is made well. It's solid. I mean, it's light, it's small, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but for free, I certainly think it's a nice little gift to include with the order. Now comes time with the writing sample with this Ebonite Himalaya with an extra fine steel nib. It takes about 2.5 turns for the cap to come off, and you feel it. It takes some resistance, but that means the cap's not going to come off on its own. You know, it tightens up very well. The other thing that's nice about this pen is it fits good in a hand without posting. It posts easily. It's a light pen. We'll give you those measurements. I don't have, like I said, the acrylic Himalaya to compare this to, but this cost me $23.20, so I think this is a very good pen for the price. And let's see how the nib works. So for those of you that follow this channel, I'm not an extra fine steel nib guy, but this is good. This is smooth, and when I flushed it out, it had great flow, so fast is no issue. So I'm comfortable with it. The grip section is nice. Nice big flare out at the bottom, so you're not going to get anywhere near that nib. It's a small nib, but I think it fits into the size of the pen. So I'm not going to forget to do a rating. I'm going to rate this as an 8.3. Yeah, I don't rate it any higher because there is some small flaws in it. The other thing that you need to know is that this has a very strong ebonite smell, and for those of you that may not enjoy that type of odor, it smells a little bit maybe like burning rubber or in that family. And I don't know how long it'll take for that smell to go away, but you have to be aware of that. So next we're going to take a look at the one you've probably been waiting for, the Ultra Flex nib. This is a pen Kevin included in my order. You know, this is a light pen also, like the Himalaya is a light pen. It fits fine in the hand unposted, and it really doesn't post. Yeah, you know, it comes off very easily. So for those of you that like to post and like something posted securely, this is not a pen for you. So I think you saw that it was a little bit of a hard start, and I have had feed issues with this. A lot of people have feed issues with modern examples of trying to flex. I mean, you can see it happened there. It's inconsistent. This is smooth, and it's an extra fine for these unflexed horizontal lines, and it'll flex to about a 2B, or not 2B, and in the downstrokes, but it's just not a consistent writer. So let's take a look at another flex nib that I've also experienced. So this is one that Bobby manufactured and sent to me, and I've had it for a while, probably 2 months. I've had it in this Pen BBS pen because that's where I wanted to use it. We're going to try to get it to write, and Bobby said that the Yovo feeds work better with this nib, but I haven't had an opportunity to put it into there. Let's straighten out the nib on that feed. Yeah, it looks better there. Let's see what happens. You can see in reverse it writes okay. And you know, part of the scenario is when you have a nib that flexes, you know, there's that scenario of the contact between the nib and the feed, and when you flex it, that end is going to go up. It's going to end up something like that. And so ink has to maintain cohesion, adhesion, and so I'm certain the feeds are very particular. But so what I'm experiencing with the FPR Flex nib is not something that I've not experienced before. I know people have talked about the Conklin Duraflex also sometimes exhibiting this. The Pilot Falcon nib, you know, that's one of the challenges. So I'm going to try this in my Yovo, see if it'll fit, and we'll take a look at that. As this video seems to have turned into an exploration of modern flex steel nibs, I would be remiss if I wouldn't have taken Bobby's recommendation and put the flex nib that he sent me into a Yovo feed that's in my Edison Pearl that I did a review on a little bit ago. I decided to use a little bit of different ink that I've never used in a pen or done anything for, so I bought this ink. And buying ink without really testing it is a challenge, like buying a pen without writing with it. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. So this ink is a little bit different than I expected. I think you can see it's still a little bit more sensitive than what you would like, but it certainly is an improvement over the Pen BBS pen and feed that I had it in before. This doesn't flex as much as the FPR nib does, but last time when I did this it was completely dry, so now you can do a little bit. So I would basically call this, and as you can see we have a little bit of problems there. I think the nib springs easily, even though it doesn't look that way. There's a little bit of space there, as you can see. So we'll put the nib back. The space is now gone. We'll put nib back to paper and we're back to writing. So I would say that this was an interesting experiment, but it didn't work the way that it should. So just to put things in perspective, this is the pen that I had that flex nib in before, and I've replaced it with just a generic Chinese medium nib, and this really works fine. And this works the way that I would expect it to work. I should spell properly. You know, solid, consistent writer. You're not going to get any flex. This is not soft. This is a hard nib, but smooth. And the feed is fine with this type of nib in it. So you may say, Chris, you may say, maybe you're expecting too much. So this is my reference point. This is a Jinhao 992 I've had for a while. It's one of my first ones. You got cracking there. I put some glue in it. And the nib is a little bit of a replacement nib. It's a vintage Waterman number 2. Nothing fancy, and as you can see I retained that plastic feed that the Jinhao came with. So not necessarily designed or engineered to support a flex nib. Let's see how this writes. That puts down a lot of ink, and the feed keeps up. So this is my reference point. I don't understand what's going on up here, but you know, if a pen, a $1 pen with a cheap plastic feed can keep up with a vintage Waterman number 2 nib, and this is not a full flex because I wasn't going to invest a full flex in this, but this is certainly good enough to show that it can be done, and we're talking about a lot of ink that takes a while to dry. So this is a to be continued, and this is Robert Oster Sublime, one of my excellent green inks that has some great shading to it. You know, maybe the Pen BBS green ink that has a little bit of shimmer in it, maybe that might go in here next, because I think that would also come out really, really nice. I emailed Kevin about the challenges I was having with this nib. He suggested I thoroughly clean it, so I did do a flush, but now I pulled the nib and feed out, and when I reinserted it, I made certain that it was fitting well in the feed. So that's about as far up as I think that feed can be on this nib, and I have to say that it has improved the writing. I mean, before, if I did this type of flexing, the feed would get exhausted and starve out. But now it certainly writes better. I occasionally will run into starvation, but certainly I'd say now the nib has gone from too challenging to use to a pretty good writer. Just shows you what happens with pens, and sometimes you just got to really stick with it to bring out their best. That's part of this whole analog writing. You know, these are all unique instruments that require some attention. So now I'm ready to rate this. I'm going to give it a 9.1. I would have not rated it at all the way it was writing before, but you know, thanks to Kevin focusing me on it and staying involved until I finally came out with something that works. I mean, this just feels good in the hand, so that's the important part. So before I do the closing on this video, this took 2 weeks to put together. A lot of experimentation, a lot of frustration. So I've concluded from this exercise that flex nibs are a challenge. If they're soft enough to flex well, then they may spring and not bounce back, which has been discussed a lot. Feeds are critical, ink is critical, paper is critical. It just makes a pen more challenging to write with, which at times can be fun, but at times can be frustrating. So I just wanted to sum up and say that I encourage people to try them. Maybe the number 6 FPR Ultraflex nib is going to be a little better. The Ebonite feed might be better, but as of this time I don't have those to test. I have to evaluate what I have. So thank you for sticking with me with this one. We've reached the end as my computer is beeping with new email messages. So this is the end. May you have many great writing experiences, hopefully not as challenging as the ones I've just been through here, but I think at the end the reward justifies the effort. So explore your pens. May your life be better because of them. Until the next video, bye. Now we got a good writer.